Hey guys, welcome to episode 3 of our mixed media mini-series with Workman Arts and Artfix. Today we're going to be talking about assemblage, which can also be known as 3D collage. We're going to start on Wikipedia again, and as an extension from the mixed media section, we're going to be talking about found objects. And so found objects, Wikipedia will tell you, is a quote-unquote loan translation from the French objet trouvé, describing art created and undisguised, but often modified, objects or products that are not normally considered materials from which art is made, often because they already have a non-art function. And then it'll tell you that Pablo Picasso first publicly utilized the idea when he pasted a printed image of a chair onto his paintings titled, quote-unquote, Still Life with Chair Caning. Quote-unquote, Marcel Duchamp is thought to have perfected the concept several years later when he made a series of ready-mades consisting of completely unaltered everyday objects selected by Duchamp and designated as art. The most famous example is Fountain from 1917, a standard urinal purchased from a hardware store and displayed on a pedestal resting on its side. In its strictest sense of the term ready-made, is applied exclusively to works produced by Marcel Duchamp, who borrowed the term from the clothing industry, French, quote, prêt-à-porter, which means ready to wear. And it says that it's like specifically for that time period while living in New York, specifically works dating from 1913 to 1921. And this probably seems pretty ridiculous to a lot of us now, because I think that a lot of today we just kind of accept art as art. Like we accept that anything can be art. But at the time, it was a completely ridiculous idea. Like there was a lot of boundaries that needed to be crossed in the art world before we kind of got to where we are now. And this was one of those boundaries where he took something that is like almost profane. It's almost offensive to take something that's like a toilet and put it in a public art space and call it art. And I can imagine that at the time that people would have argued with him and said, this isn't art. Like, what are you doing? But this was a huge conceptual breakthrough at the time, because up until that point, it would have never been able to be considered art. And there was a lot of kind of theorization and conceptual art that was happening at that time, which now to us probably seems pretty ridiculous, but back in the day would have been quote-unquote avant-garde, which means that you're breaking boundaries. So if you're interested in reading a little bit more about the fountain, there's a great Wikipedia page on it, which talks about how he, how he set up this piece of plumbing in the exhibit and the reactions to it. There's like a lot of really funny backstory to that I'm sure people have written extensively about. And I just want to share the idea of ready-mades because they're also really funny if you've never heard of them before. So the ready-made is an everyday object selected and designated as art. The name was first coined by Marcel Duchamp. And it says he created the first ready-made bicycle wheel in 1913, which consisted of a wheel mounted on a stool as a protest against the excessive importance attached to the works of art. And what I thought was really, really funny about this ready-made is that he essentially took two functioning objects and assembled them together and made like a useless object out of it. And then that was enough to be art. And the fact that industrialization was kind of happening at that time, so it's like they had things that were readily available that could be kind of modified in this way. Like this is something, and I think that what's really amazing about these types of works of art is that we have that ability now, but like to the nth degree, where we could go and get things for next to nothing at thrift stores and be like combining weird things. I've seen like doll lamps, I've seen some really strange things in the world kind of be combined together to create art like this. But like I personally like art that has function. I think that in a sense there was a lot of art that was created here that didn't have function, or its function was to be art, and because it was breaking those conceptual boundaries. But I just wanted to share the idea of ready-mades with you because it was like really funny, and it was like this big pivotal this big pivotal moment in conceptual art in right around the turn of the century for the early 1900s. Yeah. And so found object art can be made of a bunch of different things, and I think that the beautiful aspect of it is that it can be made out of anything. And so it kind of breaks the limits of what you think you can use as an art material. There's also trash art or junk art, as you can see here, but that's stuff that, and I think that a lot of the trash art and junk art can be, considered connections or precursors to upcycling. And so I'm really excited about upcycling because we're going to be doing a lot of that in the years to come. So I'm not going to get too much into it. I just kind of wanted to show you guys that it exists. Assemblage is like the formal term that we're going to be using to describe art of this nature. You could also call it 3D collage, and the reason that I call it 3D collage is because it's essentially what it is, as like a process, as a technique. But more formally, it's called assemblage, and so because we are assembling things, we're taking things and assembling them together, and there's like a whole area on the internet kind of related to assemblage that we're gonna look at some examples here. So we have in the Wikipedia page for assemblage this piece by Robert Rauschenberg from 1956, and you know, a lot of these artists that we're going to be kind of looking at have had huge historical impact for us conceptually without us even realizing it. So if you guys see a name that catches your fancy, definitely look into it, because guaranteed there's something really cool and fun on the other side of that Wikipedia link. So it says on here, quote, assemblage is an artistic form or medium usually created on a defined substrate. A substrate is just like the thing that we're putting it on, like the book as substrate that we talked about in the previous video. Just means that this is the surface that we're going to be working on. So it's a medium usually created on a defined substrate that consists of three-dimensional elements projecting out of or from the substrate. It is similar to collage, a two-dimensional medium. It is part of visual arts and typically uses found objects, but is not limited to these materials. And I think that that's another one of those, you know, those amazing points where like the sky is the limit. And us today, we have so much more access than like the early 1900s, even the 1950s. And I mean, we have so much stuff that it's like a problem for us. Like we've got like plastic patches in our ocean and whatever, but we've got plastic patches in our ocean and whatnot, but we can, you know, I think that this kind of speaks to the importance of upcycling and the importance of like just using things that we have in our environment that we have access to instead of just going out and buying new things all the time. I think that this is like, it's a good lesson, it's a good lifestyle to kind of develop, so that way we can kind of better utilize our environment without having to invest unnecessarily into new objects. Because if those objects are already in our environment and around us, why would we not want to use those? Anyways, I'm not going to get too much into this article either, but there's a giant list here that says artists primarily known for assemblage, and I wanted to mention it because these are guaranteed going to be some really cool, fun, interesting artists conceptually and visually for you guys to check out. Yeah, there's some examples down here. This is German, and says this is art. There's lots of cool German artists as well for both collage and assemblage, just to note. So I kind of wanted to talk to you guys before we get there. We're going to go to assemblage. So the reason that I wanted to show you guys assemblage, we're just going to go to Google Images, because if you don't have Instagram, you can just Google things and you're going to get a lot of good examples as well. I liked this here. It says Joseph Cornell, pioneer of assemblage art, because he's using clearly like a box, and he's opened the box and then filled it with little specimens. Like there's a key, a domino, a shell, some music, what looks like a piece of coral, a corked bottle, what could be a stamp, another keychain with like a little ring on it. There's like a lot of really interesting things going on, and it's such a small space. So this kind of speaks again to scale, where you can have assemblage being really tiny, like little personalized boxes, all the way up to, you know, you can make them custom dimensions, and so that means that you could cut wood to any size and kind of make a shadow box, quote unquote, and then fill it with stuff and secure it in place. I personally am working on shadow box tables right now. I think that that's really cool. So I have a shadow box that is a coffee table that like you can lift the glass off and then fill it with different things. Right now it's full of watches, and then I'm adding other things to it, but you could make a table shadow box and fill it with memories and keepsakes and stuff like that, and that would be an amazing use for a shadow box, because then it's like it's functional, you're using it, stuff like that. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a future video. Yeah, so an assemblage is really empowering, because like this is one of those examples where like people will repurpose little tiny drawers and then fill them with things. You can and it can have like a really wide range of aesthetics. Like it doesn't have to look antique. You can paint it however you want, and you can add whatever elements you like. I think there's a lot of potential also for paper cut, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So this looks like it's like assembled scrap wood, like different pieces of scrap wood that have just kind of been probably collaged together. Potentially they've used like nails or screws or staples or something else to fit this together, but very likely they've probably used wood glue and kind of stuck this together as one piece. So, you know, and you can make clocks. I think that clocks would be a great example of a functional object that you could use assemblage for. Before we get there, we're going to go through my Instagram. I have a bunch of ones that I've actually saved, but I just wanted to show you that if you scroll through Google, that you'll get a bunch of really interesting things to look at as well. Shadow boxes tend to be specific to paper cut, or shadow box art. There's like specifically paper cut art. You can use shadow boxes for anything, but a lot of the stuff that shows up when you search shadow box art is related to paper cut, and we'll have like oftentimes like in this example here, it will have a light in the back that's like illuminating and giving this sense of depth. This is one that has like a white light as opposed to a yellow light, and it gives it a completely different feeling. I love that. It looks so adventurous, and this little guy with the sword. This looks like it was made out of collage, a bunch of different collage elements. Same thing with this one. You can use scenes from movies. So, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later with a Magic the Gathering abacus that I made, where I'm going to talk a little bit about how I made it, and then I'll link you guys to some other people's videos of people who have done paper cut and like paper cut light boxes and the abacus. So that way you guys have some resources that I don't currently have available for you, but I will in future. I'm going to make some, I'm sure. But these ones are really cool because you can use, like, even this one. This is the Great Wave off of Kanagawa, and what they've probably done is printed multiple pictures and then layered them. Like you print 3 or 4 different images, and then you can cut out different elements of that for each respective layer. Yeah, and there's some artists who are like absolutely phenomenal with this. I've actually not done this yet, save the little magic abacus, but I wanted to share it with you because it's something that is really amazing. Actually, while we're here now, so this person, Cheslin, has a wonderful video. So this is a 10-minute video on how to make a paper cut light box, and they show you all the techniques. They describe all the things that they do in terms of layering, and they give you little tips and advice, and they actually do 3 different ones here. So they actually do all 3 of these, and one of these is like really advanced, one of them is intermediate, and then there's one here that's really quote unquote beginner, like it's easy because you're just making a light box out of like foam core or like the illustration board, so it's like a foam board. Yeah, and then they describe the whole time. It's really cool. This person's YouTube channel was like really cool and inspiring. I really liked how they did it, and I just wanted to share it with you because it's a really great resource to have if you're interested in doing like a paper cut light box like this. This is a tutorial from over 10 years ago by this guy named Jacob K, by this YouTuber named Jacob K. And the reason I wanted to show it to you here is like his camera quality is rough, but he describes what he does like really, really well, and he kind of shows the different layers of how to make the cards. And so he shows that on the left here you have the stack of cards that he's just cut through standard, like cut the both rectangles out. He has the one that's going to be kind of more in the foreground here in the middle, and then he has the one at the back that's going to be like the background. So, and then he stacks them together and shows you how that would look. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my own. So I'm going to show you guys in this image here. He kind of shows halfway through. He's probably like cut his big stack of cards that he's cut halfway through. He's added his little kind of rod with the beads on it, and then you add your other cards on top, and yeah, and then you get an abacus. So, which is really cool. So we're going to go back and we're going to just kind of talk about different types of assemblage and 3-dimensional objects that you can create with collage and paint and mixed media stuff, because it's honestly endless. Like, you can upcycle everything forever if you wanted to in your whole house. Like, you could change everything. So first one that we're going to talk about here is like a DIY. So the hashtag is DIY, hashtag recycle, decoupage paper, decoupage lovers, crafts, chalk paint, vintage, shabby chic, mixed media. And this is really cool because these look just like they look like they could be like milk cartons, or yeah, they look like they could be milk cartons that have been painted with metallic paint and kind of pasted onto with a variety of things. And I think that metallic paint is a really cool material to be working with because it really does change the aesthetic of it really does change kind of like the vibe of the aesthetic of the things that you paint with it. This is just an example of what is like a mirror frame, and this person has painted it and created like a gradient from black to pink, and it looks like they have art inside of it as well, but it could just be a mirror that you like tape off the mirror so that you don't get stuff on it, and then you paint, you're redoing a frame. So and then that frame could be used for either as a shadow box or as a piece for a 2-dimensional mixed media, or whatever else that you feel inclined to use it for. Here's another example of a frame, like a close-up of a frame that's been painted that seems to have like a lot of beautiful kind of foliage that looks like it could be like plastic flowers that you would get at the dollar store or something, that they've upcycled and kind of have peeking out here. This is an example of one that is kind of like a paper cut, but it's like a 2D, 3D collage. It's like a 3-dimensional collage more so in the sense that they've layered a bunch of paper and a piece of wood and some cogs, but most of these things seem like relatively flat, but a lot of it has to do with the painting style of it. It's very steampunk. They've made this kind of cohesive blue and orange assemblage, and it seems like it could be something that hangs on the wall and you don't even need to frame it on its own because it kind of has these interesting edges. kind of framing it. Like the edges of the heart and the edges of the sticks and stuff are what's framing it. So I think that this is really beautiful in the sense that you don't even need a frame for these kind of things. I personally just feel more comfortable working in a frame because you can pick things up that are frame like and then have that to work inside of. But if you don't have a frame and you don't feel like you have to be working inside of a box, you can always work outside of the box. Here's an example of like just a little container that has been collaged. It could have been wood, it could have been plastic. On the outside, I love the circus feel. Like I'm a huge fan of carnival kind of feels. So this is a great example of how you can collage and upcycle something in your environment and completely like reskin it to have a different energy. So this is a really, really cool example. The reason that I wanted to share this one, I thought that this one was pretty mind-blowing, was it says, quote unquote, trash to treasure, a magical world of art craft. Trash to treasure. I have used mechanicals packaging for the base and for sentiment background. Used Prima flowers packaging to create tags, Prima marketing ink, packaging beads, flowers, Finnabear Studio packaging wax, fantasy and rust texture pastes, fluid acrylics. I have also used creative embellishments and Mudcraft stamps, chipboards, Tim Holtz frame. And I think that the reason that this is really cool is that they're telling you what they are using. And so wax, fantasy, and rust texture pastes. That is something that you'll see often in these scrapbooking things that that really change like the aesthetic of something. So it looks like they've used it on the moon and on the paper, as well as on the mirror frames a little bit. And so they would have painted that on, let it dry, and then you paint over top of it, and it completely changes the surface. Yeah, completely changes the aesthetic of the surface that you're working on. I've not personally worked with that kind of thing, but I know that they exist, and I would definitely encourage you guys to explore them if you like this type of aesthetic of things. And yeah, the reason that I really like this one is because they're using like a plastic package as a background, and it's just beautiful. So it shows that you really can use absolutely anything and make it into a beautiful piece of art. So this person says that, what did they do? It doesn't actually tell you what they've made it out of, but this looks like it could have been made out of like little pieces of wood or cardboard that they've textured and painted and like built up. And maybe it looks like there's some printmaking or some collage or image transfer kind of done on here. I know that was like really vague and I said a bunch of different things, but sometimes it's really hard to tell. And I think that that's like a lot of what is exciting about mixed media is the experiment, is that you don't really know. And the more that you do it, and the more that you mess around with it, the more effects that you're gonna find that you like, and then you practice recreating them, because once you find something where you're like, oh, I really like how that looks, kind of do what you did over again, and it's going to turn out slightly differently, but the chances are, you do it more than once. That's the only way to get good at anything, and you might discover something that nobody else has seen before, just through your experimentation. Here's another example of just kind of like metal things, kind of collage on. This is exactly that Magritte I was talking about, the man, I was going to say man with apple, that portrait of Magritte with the apple in front of his face. So that's a really, it's a cool surrealist shout out from Mitform's casting. Yeah. And this guy's also kind of tagging Tim Holtz stamps. So obviously Tim Holtz has some cool stuff I kind of want to check out. Oh yeah. Looks like Tim Holtz does the distress ink. So there's some really amazing content guaranteed for Tim Holtz. I'm actually going to subscribe. Yeah, you can do a lot with distress inks and stamps, and kind of combine printmaking and inks together to create some really beautiful stuff. Like, I don't even know how this was made, but I guarantee you, if you check out Tim Holtz stuff, you could eventually figure that out. Resist and grunge. So resist painting is really, really cool. It looks like, oh, I'm so glad that we discovered this. This is exciting. I'm really excited that we discovered this. This is a really cool thing. I haven't really worked with distress inks either, but I've seen a lot of it online. I've seen artists who work with it that just do amazing work. I love the rainbows that can come out of this. Thanks, Tim Holtz. You look cool. Anyway, so we're going to go back. So here is an example of a Yu-Gi-Oh card that has been made into a hologram, or into, they actually didn't do the abacus thing with this, but regardless, it's a holographic background, and I wish that my first one was a holographic background. The one that I'm going to be talking about isn't, but it's still really beautiful, and so I just wanted to share that with you guys, because this is something that you can use as a life counter if you play like Magic the Gathering or anything like that. Yeah. This one I thought was like really cute. It kind of reminded me of like, a newborn baby or something. It reminded me of like, it was beautiful, and I like the crystals in the background. It just gives me like good candy feelings. So I really like this person's this person's, you know, aesthetic, and it's a good example of how you can kind of fill this, and you can fill this with keepsakes even. I see tickets in the back, you know, and they've used holographic and kind of like beautiful beads and pom-poms and stuff that are like glittery, that are you know, that catch the light really well. So using things that play with light. Think about light when you're thinking about art and shadow boxes and film. Actually, when you're thinking about anything, think about light. Think about the way the light catches it, and that's true for like matte versus gloss. So it's like if you're thinking about finishing a painting and you're like, oh, I want to put a spray sealer on it. Think about whether you want, you know, gloss is beautiful because it looks wet, but then it's also hard to photograph. So think about that. You know, the holographic stuff, this is a good example of how like the holographic stuff, it looks good in a picture, but it looks amazing in real life because when the light hits it and it moves and all those different angles kind of happen. That's why with the card, I kind of showed the little video clip because I wanted to show you guys that like light does make a difference, and seeing things in person, like things always look better in person. So don't forget that, and don't be disappointed if you take a picture of something that you make and you're like, oh, it doesn't look as good. Probably never will. This shadow box is an example of something that probably still looks better in person, but is also technically amazing just on its own in a picture. So how they might have done this would have been maybe printing out this same picture. Let's see how many elements they have that are not the background here. So let's say that's the background. 1, 2, 3, 4, the dragon, 5, the knight, 6, the woman in red, and then like 7 for the piece. So let's say that this was all like one image that they had created digitally. They would have printed out at least 6 or 7 different copies of that and then cut out each, like on a thicker, nice cardstock, or like on a slightly thicker paper, and then they would have cut out each individual element, and then as the layers go back, done their layering accordingly. So that's kind of my theory for that. I don't know if that's how this person did it, but if it was me, that's how I would do it. And this is like really advanced, so like I don't expect you guys to be making anything like this, but I just want you to know that it's possible to make stuff this intricate with techniques like this. So actually, and it says Medieval Shadow Box New Crafting Friday video is up on YouTube. So this person's name is too long for me to try and sound out as one word, but they obviously have a YouTube that you can check out. So definitely, if you're interested in seeing how this was made, I'm interested in seeing how this is made. I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm going to have that in my back pocket for later. Yeah, so great work. Great work, Anna. This is another piece that's a shadow box piece that says Adam Ohlers. And again, I'm not expecting you guys to be able to do this, but I just wanted to share this with you because it is a shadow box piece that this person probably made. And it looks like they made it like with watercolor and analog, like it looks like they were cutting out their individual stuff. So I'm not entirely sure how this person's process would have gone, whether they would have like made like an overall drawing and then kind of made copies of that drawing and then filled it in and cut it, or if they just would have cut each individual element and knew that the shadow box was going to be like, say it's like 11 by 17 or whatever. But just amazing detail work with the water and like the depth that you can create even with just layering paper just a little bit. Like this is probably not even that thick. Like I'm gonna guess that this is, you know, definitely probably not over 3 inches thick, over 3 inches like deep. And so I think that it's really cool that you can create depth like this, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. This person's work is really cool. So Sophia Filea. So Sophia here does custom, it looks like custom kind of dioramas as shadow boxes, miniature art, modern miniatures. Like those are the types of things that they're hashtagging here, tiny art. But the one that I wanted to show you the most is this Alice in Wonderland one, because they've clearly custom made this tall kind of house looking thing, and then cut out all of the different shapes here. And what I'm really interested in sharing with you is how they created this kind of like tube tunnel effect. So they had a second picture that they shared, and you can see at the top here that this looks like either a piece, it looks like a piece of cardboard that has been kind of scored, and then they've bent it around like this so that way it masks like the corners at the back, and then it looks like they've used like some type of fabric to cover kind of and smooth out that perspective warp here. So they have the wormhole, so to speak, up at the top, and then they've created this like illusionary perspective of us tumbling down the wormhole, which is like just really remarkable. And you can see that there's like the square edge out here where they've kind of added some plants from up at the top, and that they've kind of stuck down the tube at different depths. The key, the cat, the cards, lots of C words there, the chandelier, lots of C words. Yeah, and so from the front it looks pretty interesting, and I like the fact that you can kind of peek inside of it at this perspective and see the floor at the bottom. So just really, I was really impressed by this work. Wanted to share it with you so that you guys know, again, you can create custom pieces with wood if that's something that you have access to or are into. This is a beautiful shadow box in the sense that it's like a display piece. Like shadow boxes don't necessarily have to be glued down the same way that collages are. So this is a beautiful little shelving unit that is housing these polyfaceted dice. And it's just wonderful. Like I love the dice like this. I used to get really obsessed, like going into the hobby shops and like looking in the glass cabinets at all of the different types of, you know, marbling effects and the gold and like the, you know, those beautiful ones. So if you have this type of thing, then you can get something like this to put them on display, so that way they don't have to be tucked into a box all the time. Here's one last one that I wanted to share from Sophia, because I thought that the use of these look like wooden blocks that have been painted to look like buildings. I really liked the wooden ladder that they've probably used, like maybe like shish kebab skewers combined with like some other little splinters of wood, maybe a little piece of collage, and the clouds made out of cotton or like stuffing, you know, like stuffing that would go in pillows or teddy bears and stuff like that. So I just wanted to share that with you guys as an idea for if you wanted to make clouds inside of your shadow box, that is a totally doable thing. Yeah, or buildings, and you can make a lot out of cardboard, but I think it's pretty clever that they used like kind of different shapes, different scraps of like wood blocks here. This is kind of like a layered collage that I thought was absolutely gorgeous, and I wanted to share with you guys. Again, this doesn't look like it has a frame, like it seems like it is kind of quote unquote self-framing. And so this is, yeah, really beautiful with the foliage, kind of has like an Art Deco kind of feel to it. Yeah, in like really rich colors. Like I really like the color scheme that they use, like deep blues and kind of like ruby red and like sapphire blue and emerald green and like the amethyst purple. Like it's kind of got that feeling of gems and jewels and like royalty or something to it. So yeah, I just wanted to comment because I really, really love this piece of work. Yeah. Here is another example of kind of a display box. So this doesn't look like it hangs on the wall, but and it looks like it kind of has like a lot of soft things in it because it's holding like a bunch of different artifacts. And so yeah, your shadow boxes don't have to hang on the wall. I think that there's more of a concern for you to be kind of securing your things and gluing them down if you were to be hanging it on the wall. But if you wanted something like this, then you could just kind of have something really casual to, you know, as a display piece that you could even swap out if you didn't have like crazy antiques like this. Like this person probably wants to keep their antiques inside of their shadow box at all times. But if you didn't have things like that were quite this, you know, from the old world, then you could swap them out as you saw fit. Something that I'm really interested in, that I'm looking for, so if any of you guys are in Ontario and have access to stuff like this, I would be really interested in getting my hands on one of these. I think that these are old vintage, it says this for this person, it says vintage artist drawers. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that this person is in the United States anyways. But I think that old museums used to have these as well for specimens, like specimen drawers. And so I would really, really love to have these to like put like my inks and my art supplies and like little tiny things. So that's something that I'm looking for, you know, myself. So if you guys have access to them, please comment, link, email me, call me. I'm kidding, don't call me. Yeah, so there's, and this kind of display box, like the specimen box idea, I think is really beautiful because, you know, because it displays things in a way that is like very precious. And I mean, like there is colonial history attached to, you know, specimen boxes and stuff like that, but I do believe in reclaiming history and kind of repurposing and upcycling and, you know, rebuilding and all those R words that are, you know, associated with kind of regenerating and recreating, reimagining. Yeah, those ideas, like I think that I really like a lot of the idea of the specimen in the museum, but they definitely didn't do it properly the first time around. So, you know, I'm going to use it myself for my everyday, you know, as I think it probably would have made more sense to do initially. So this is a specimen drawers for moths and stuff, and I think that that's like absolutely gorgeous. I know quite a few people who would be like, this is probably a really expensive piece. It's amazing. This person says metal and bell. It says scored all these for $30 and is one of the best finds ever. Specimens like this usually go for $60 per moth, and it's true actually. Like what I've seen online, those types of specimens are very expensive. So if you ever come across something like that in a thrift store, probably a good find. Here's an example of one that was probably made out of the dollar store stuff, with like laser cut wood. So you can repurpose a dollar store kind of like little treasure chest opening box if you don't have access to anything. If you're really stuck and you don't have access to anything, you can use cardboard as always. But the little wooden dollar store boxes seem like they would be a really useful thing to kind of work off as a foundation if you wanted to have that. Those shadow boxes, like you can get shadow boxes at Michael's for like kind of cheap, you know, like a little bit more expensive. I said kind of like that because I feel like they're still kind of, you know, they could be cheaper, but whatever. This piece I just thought was like really weird and surrealist and kind of reminded me of the guy with the Magritte man with apple. I keep calling it man with apple. Boy, I'm calling it boy with... because of Boy with Apples, so it's like from it's this painting from that Wes Anderson used in the movie Grand Budapest Hotel. Anyways, I keep calling it Man with Apple though, and it's not. It's anyways, it reminds me of the Magritte painting, the self-portrait. So this is kind of weird, but I wanted to share it anyways because it was just interesting. I liked this piece here by 7 Line Art Studio because they really just did a great job. So they've got this beautiful frame, they've got this beautiful painting, and then they've got a paintbrush, and the paintbrush kind of like is an accent to the painting, like it looks like that. And then they've like signed the I was gonna say they autographed it then they tagged the brush itself, which is just, it looks awesome. And the red in the brush kind of corresponding to the red in the painting makes it seem like, you know, this is what this was used for. So I really like this piece. I like the kind of the combination between painting and assemblage here, especially with tools. Like I'm really into kind of, we're going to talk a second about my own kind of tool assemblage thing. This is another really cute one that uses a lot of paper kind of origami almost elements to it, origami and scrapbooking kind of elements. So and it reminded me again of like baby showers or something. So I wanted to share that because it's really cute, and I like the sparkles. I think that the sparkles are like a really nice addition to a piece like this. This person's art again is like really, really next level. And they're actually in Toronto, which is really exciting. So it says, detail of a shadow box that I created a while ago. This one is based off the myth of Shangyi, the Chinese goddess of the moon. I don't know how to pronounce that. How do you say it? Or Shang-E. Anyways, but this artist stuff I was really impressed with, and I think that this would be a good example of one that might have been created digitally, and then you print out a bunch of different copies of it and then cut out the layers and kind of assemble it like that. But again, I don't know. This is just me kind of theorizing on how I think that this would be made. Yeah, but this piece of artwork is absolutely stunning. Kind of want to know more about that. Oh, this is beautiful. Okay, I'm going to follow this artist as well. And to know that we have another, you know, that this person is located in Toronto is amazing. So very, very happy to have found this artwork as well. Man, we are on a path to discovery today, guys. So here's another example of kind of those specimen drawers. The specimen, and it's got that like old antique-y kind of like, you know, 1800s, 1700s paperwork and the pen script. Like this is like before TypeScript was even normalized kind of antique. And I like the effects, like the stamps and stuff. It's cool, that magnifying glass. And this person says that they found these shadow boxes in Germany, and they love them and they bought them. The artist was a kind elderly man, and he never stopped talking about how he collects and makes these boxes. Now they're on our wall. So that's cool. Yeah, great. This is absolutely beautiful. And you can see actually that these ones are made out of like little drawers. So he's really clever at repurposing drawers. So it's like if you're throwing out IKEA furniture and you have a drawer handy, that's a good repurposing that you can do for a shadow box. Here's another beautiful example of a paper cut, and this one only looks like it has like 3 or 4 layers. So it's like your front layer would be the foliage here, your middle layer would be these beautiful ferns, then you might have the silhouette of the person, 3, you have the trees in the background, 4, and then you have that one that's at the farthest back, which would be the moon with the stars, and so that would be 5 layers. Absolutely beautiful. And so in this video, she actually shows you specifically how to cut and light each of these layers, and even like so if you had something really advanced like this, or you're a digital artist and you're like, okay, I want to try and make a shadow box, she shows you how you can print and trace and cut and, you know, transfer the layers with a light box or a glass coffee table, to be able to trace out and then cut with an X-Acto blade. And so specifically you would need an X-Acto blade. Don't forget that you would need an X-Acto blade to do detailed shadow box and paper cut like this. This is like a must tool for that type of detail. Yeah, you absolutely can't cut with scissors to do anything that detailed, so worth picking up at the dollar store. I'm gonna get myself a good one eventually, but this is from the dollar store and it's been doing me perfect for what I need. Here's an example of one where somebody has upcycled a personal television. And I thought it was so cool because it just has that synthwave kind of like surrealist, like it's all the stuff that I love about digital collage, but like in a 3-dimensional analog collage in a box that's also a red TV that could be, yeah, I don't know. It just struck a lot of really awesome chords for me when I look at this picture. You can upcycle, you know, old technology and stuff like that too, especially the stuff that's kind of like in the in-between where it's not like super, super heavy duty, but it's still built well. So it's like probably made out of like heavy duty plastic instead of like heavy duty metals and glass and whatever. So that's cool. This is a really cute one that looks like it was made out of clay. And you can do that too. So it's like if you have access to a Potter's Guild, if you're in North Bay, we do have a guild locally that you can become a member of, or take classes with if you don't want to actually become a full-time member, because it is, you know, you have to pay some money to have a yearly membership, but it's really worth it in my opinion, because you get accesses to glazes and firings and like everybody kind of supports. Yeah. So this is a good example of how you can make a shadow box with clay. And at that point, it's almost like a relief carving, or maybe not a relief carving, but like you know, relief sculpture. Relief sculpture is its whole own area of art that is like kind of like 2D, 3D sculptures. So that's kind of looking at that almost. It's kind of like bridging to that. This is another really awesome paper cut image. Apparently this artist here, Aaron Curry, says limited edition print shadow boxes are available in my store. Space Kitties forever. Or I assume that this artist works primarily with Space Kitties, which is exciting. So just even looking at a lot of their stuff, they've got a lot of cats and dogs and skeletons. So if you're into those things, that is a great page for you to follow. Yeah, but I thought that this was like really beautiful, that because you could see kind of like the ink and you could see what looks like pencil kind of shading and stuff like that. And yeah, and I liked a lot of the kind of graphic art details attached to this. This is an example of like a liquid art disc that might have been like, it might have been a wooden disc that they did liquid art on, and then they put that in a shadow box, and now that's a piece of art. So I thought that was really cool. You could also hang liquid art just as is on the wall, in my opinion, if you do something that kind of like where the liquid wraps around the edges and kind of frames it. Frames itself, but you can also do that where you're hanging them in shadow boxes too. Here's another beautiful one that looks like it's got quite a few layers, and it looks like they've used like paint and tissue paper, and that they've painted the box and added some gold and stuff in there. So yeah, there's like a lot of different types of styles that you can achieve with this. So just not to feel limited with the things that you do. So a lot of the things that I'm showing you are just, you know, examples that you can work with, you know, for inspiration. So this person's going to be doing some botanical stuff, and you can use entirely botanical kind of content if that's the type of thing that you're into, and pick stuff up off the ground. Just make sure that it's like, you know, I always leave my stuff for a few days. This one is really interesting to me because it's kind of incorporating what appears to be like pieces of copper and copper tubing. And that's something that I've seen used really beautifully in other types of kind of mixed media collages. So copper is like a wonderful material, and you can get sheet copper at like your local hardware store, and you can even cut it and carve it. I mean, I don't know if you need special scissors for copper. I'd imagine if you're cutting sheet metal, just ask the person that you're talking to at the hardware store if they have, you know, specific scissors to cut sheet metal. Because even though it's like soft and malleable, I'd imagine that, you know, having a set of scissors just for that might be useful as well. But it's a beautiful effect, and so you have like this black and copper kind of aesthetic coming from this artist here, and I wanted to share that because I liked the look of, you know, I like the combination of like what they're doing kind of with the photograph and the drawing and the metal. This is another paper cut kind of shadow one where it looks like video games, or, you know, it's maybe some like little worlds that somebody's creating in. Oh yeah, it says a Christmas gift I made for someone of a shadow box of their favorite game, Hollow Knight. And so it looks like they would have taken screenshots probably, and then done the thing where you print out like 4 or 5 pictures, cut out like each of your 4 or 5 layers, and then kind of glued it with the foam core, kind of stacking it up again. This looks like it's entirely ceramic to me, and so ceramics are like a really wonderful medium to be working in if you like things that are three-dimensional. There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom and exploration and discovery to be happening with ceramics. This is an example of one that was like a light bulb, where somebody has like collaged a lot of different things onto the light bulb and then painted over it, because it's really interesting what you can do with a coat of paint if you make everything one color. Like if they were to have made all of this look copper, but they didn't, they kind of used the teal copper kind of contrast, and it looks like the things are like growing off the light bulb almost, which is a cool effect. So I like what's going on here. I just wanted to share that you could even use a light bulb as a substrate, so to speak, to create that. And they have metallic wax in the background, and you can see that actually for this person that they're using the gel and the gesso, and they've got all of these things kind of just out of focus. That looks like soldering. That looks like, yeah, solder over here, which is interesting. But yeah, and they've clearly used kind of these things to create these effects and these textures, which is super, super cool. Yeah, and just so you guys know that there's lots to experiment with. This is something where an artist has repurposed like an easel, like an artist palette, and they've clearly done like a lot of texturing, a lot of like maybe with tissue paper, but maybe with some of those like those gel and paste textures that we've seen other artists in the Instagram feed kind of working with as well. I really liked the swirly kind of Art Deco scissors here. I thought this was a clock originally, which I think it would be more impressive even if it was a clock. Or you could, you know, maybe it is. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. It's in Spanish, and it's not giving me the option to translate. But yeah, I really love the work, and I love the fact that they used that like the embossed label maker to create like the wording here, limited edition. Yeah. Anyways, great work. The last one I'm going to show you here is from William Goodman Art, and it's like it says this quote, "This customized gold box hangs next to my painting, quote unquote, where the music began, at the Westin Jackson. It contains all of the tools I used to create the 6 foot by 9 foot canvas." This is such a beautiful piece to me, because I think that like the tools of the trade, so to speak, and seeing like the life that has been lived by those tools is really cool, where you can see all the colors on the palette, and you know, and in the cup, and you know, the remnants of the paintbrush and the gold that like, and the spray bottle that was used to create that. So this is one of my favorite things, and actually for myself, this is kind of the idea for my tools. So yeah, we're gonna stop there. So this is an example of a piece that I'm starting. So this is like so this is like I'm going to be making like a tool kind of wall, like, or like, so all my tools that I used like, this is all rusted now, it's unusable. Like this doesn't have any, you know, I have more pencils that I can use here, but I really liked some of these, and some of these are my favorite tools. So I thought that as I use paintbrushes and whatever other hand tools, that I would like add them to the wall. And so this is going to hang in my studio, and eventually it's going to be full, but this is kind of like a longer term 3D assemblage art piece that I'm kind of working on. And what I did was this was just a frame. This was just a frame that I got at Value Village, but it was like, it had no back and it had no glass. And so I just took a piece of the back of a poster board. Like I had a poster frame from Michael's that was broke, and it was just plastic and whatever. So I took the backing of it, which is like kind of it's like a melamine type thing, and I just kind of screwed it into, yeah, and I just screwed it into the I screwed it into the back of this with like really short screws, and it should hold. Like it seems like it's sturdy enough that it should be fine. And then I'm gonna add like some D-rings on the back of this and hang it in my studio. Something else that you can use, so it's like I was in a thrift store and I found this kind of little shadow box, and it looks like it's been handmade by someone, and it used to have like these like seeds on the inside of it. But I decided that I was going to take that out, and so I kind of took off this, and then there's a piece of glass. You got to be really careful when taking stuff off, because it would be really easy for this to just kind of fall and break. And then now I have like this empty little box here where I'm probably going to put like, you know what, I've got like, you know, pen nibs or stuff, and so I can take little tiny things that I'm not using anymore, or have lived their life, or have been rusted, or have been ruined, or whatever. And I'm gonna fill this with like little tiny art supplies, and then kind of upcycle it in that way. And then once I'm done, once I have like my glass in there and I have this on the back, I'll probably seal this, because this was like really sealed, like somebody had glued this shut, and so I had to kind of like pry it open and pop it off. But I'll probably seal it with like, you know, glue or caulking of some kind. I'll probably use caulking because it's kind of like more malleable and easier. So I'm hoping that will be enough. I'm not going to be putting anything too heavy in it, so I'm not even too concerned about like what exactly I'm going to be using to seal it. If it was heavy, I would probably be, you know, leaning towards something like really, really heavy duty. But yeah, I kind of liked the idea of the caulking because it was like kind of jelly. Yeah. Something that you can use as well, so something that I'm going to be kind of creating a little short video for you guys about, is going to be like a shadow box, a three-dimensional shadow box, that where these are something that my friend and I found at you know, a Value Village or like a thrift store or something for like pretty cheap. I think it was like $5 for all 3 of these like wooden panels, and somebody's like painted them, so they have that on the back and this on the front. I'm probably going to be kind of gold leafing them or copper leafing them to kind of refinish, but for now I thought it would be cool if I used like the tiniest one, maybe the tiniest one, as like a shadow box, because like it has stuff on the back already to hang, so it's already like a ready to go kind of, like it doesn't even need anything. I can add a background to it. I haven't decided on whether or not I'm gonna add a background to it. And the other thing that I'm gonna be using is something that you can get in the diorama section. So if you go to Michael's, if you go to like an arts and crafts store, a lot of the time they will have little tiny miniature stuff. I don't exactly know like what people use dioramas for, but so these are examples of little tiny trees, and I thought that they were like really amazing. So what I'm probably going to do is use like a quote, like an inspirational quote, and then make a little tiny like lake or a river or something, or like a little sunset. And I'm probably going to make something with this inside of that and then put like a quote. And I might use the bigger one actually. Now that I say that out loud, I think I might use like the bigger one to create like a more of an essence of a world, so that the tree just isn't stuck in a box there. Yeah, if you don't have, you know, those things, like that's something that I thrifted. That's something that you could probably find something similar in like the wood section at Value Village as an example. You could probably find something similar. If you don't, then you can always use, you know, an Amazon box. And what I would do is I would take my handy dandy, you know, my ruler, my pen, and I would like cut probably, you know, a couple inches. Like I decide how thick I wanted my box. If I know that it's going to be like a square, like a 1 foot square as an example, and then you can just make your measurements. I would always draw first and then cut your box, and then create a shadow box like that. And so I'll probably do a little tiny walkthrough for that as well, just, you know, to help you guys out. The last thing I'm going to show you guys is my little tiny abacus here. So this little tiny abacus was something that I made as a life counter. I kind of got into Magic the Gathering a couple years ago. Actually, if you can see at the bottom, it says like Wizards of the Coast 2013. So this would have been pretty close to 2013 when I made this. And I got these, the little rod here, and like, yeah, I got the little rods, and I got these beads at Michael's. And the reason I like these beads is because they kind of have like this ancient feel to it. It almost reminded me of like Aztec kind of patterning, like South American indigenous patterning and stuff that I really loved. But then, you know, the card itself, you can see that I cut out a bunch of different layers of the cards here, and then I glued it together. I glued the bottom bit closer to the front, and then I kind of pushed it back. And I don't know if I just glued them right down up at the top here, or exactly what I did, because it was actually so many years ago. But and then you just paint the edges black. Yeah, you just paint all your edges, and you're more or less good to go. So this is kind of what my abacus looks like. It always gets caught on the one side there, but it was really cool. And you know, and I would kind of wish that I would have used something holographic for this, but I think that on the whole it turned out pretty cool for what it was. And you can make these at home. You could sell them online. I've seen them be sold for pretty expensive, considering, because it's like a custom made piece, and especially if you chose like, you know, you chose specific special cards that were like holographic even maybe. But then it's like, I don't know if you want to be defacing holographic cards. That's really up to you guys. But yeah, I had a lot of fun making this. It was really satisfying. And you can kind of get everything that you need locally at craft stores and stuff. Or if you have beads of your own, you can always do that as well. But yeah, I hope that this was really helpful for you guys to kind of see, you know, to kind of see the different potentials for what you can do with three-dimensional collage. And I'm going to be making a couple of walkthroughs for you. If you enjoyed this content, like and subscribe. I always appreciate comments and feedback on things that you guys would be interested in seeing. And I'm definitely going to be working on some more videos to kind of talk about some pieces that I've already made, as well as some walkthroughs for you guys to check out in future for three-dimensional collage and assemblage. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing the stuff that you guys create.